All right. We're going to start with that. And in chapter 2, verse 14, he's talking about, if you start listening, if you read it just kind of off the cuff, it almost sounds like controversy, right? Works-based righteousness. Well, he wants to stir the pot a little bit because I think he wants to get us thinking. I think what James is trying to get at here is he wants us to think about what kind of faith we have. He's not excluding faith. He's trying to bring the faith and those works together for a reason. And he wants us to think, what kind of faith is it? Is it just a faith in God, or is it a faith on God? I think it's interesting that when I was reading about this and studying, it almost sounds like he's trying to contradict Paul. Because in Ephesians, Paul writes, "By grace you have been saved through faith, and not of yourselves. It is a gift of God, not of works, so that anyone would boast." James is saying, you better have works. But I don't think he's contradicting him here. I think what we need to look at is faith itself. The word faith in the dictionary is defined as having complete trust or confidence in something or someone. The Greek word for faith is pistis. The word for belief or faith on something is pisteuo. This word pisteuo is a verb. It stresses an active and continuous vital trust. And pisteuo is the word that James is using here. It's not a faith in something, it's a faith on something. So you're putting all of your faith on that thing. In this case, on the Lord. I'm going to give you an example. Hopefully this will get the point across. A belief in something is like saying, okay, I believe we have a federal government. That government exists in Washington. They have their houses and chambers and everything else. I believe that. That's true. A belief in, or belief on, or pisteuo, would be like saying, I believe we have a federal government. They exist in Washington, and I believe they have my best interest at heart, and I'm going to give them all my money and let them take care of my life. I don't pisteuo my government, okay? I believe that they exist, and I believe that they are there. They have a job, but they don't run our lives. But that's another story. But I think it does give you an idea. We believe in that, but we don't believe on that. Amen? So in verses 15 and 16, he actually talks about our faith in action, our works. And the word faith is a verb. So having faith in something requires an action. It's an action word. It's not stagnant. It moves. It continues to do things. That's why we're called followers of Christ. Following is an action. So it's not just, yep, I believe in that, and then you turn around and go the other way. I believe in that, so I'm going to follow him and what he says and what he does. It says, if we know someone is flat broke and has nothing to eat, and speaking a little Christianese like, brother, be warm, be filled, be blessed, have a great day. Well, how much good does that do? What kind of love is that showing someone? Zero. We haven't done any good. We've done absolutely nothing to change the position that they're in. We can't always do something by ourselves. I get that. But we can sometimes as a church. You can make a phone call. You can send a text. Maybe you can just get your group of friends to get together and say, hey, I know some needs. These people need some help. This person's in a world of hurt. We need to help them. What can we do together? How can we pool our resources to help these people? That is our faith in action. And that's what James is talking about. We have an obligation to do that. It's not an if or maybe. It's we have an obligation. We are Christ's hands and feet. That's what we are supposed to do. In verse 17, he talks about faith. And he says, faith is without works is dead. Our faith doesn't move. If our faith does not move us, or push us to do something for that person, it's not much of a faith at all. In Matthew 22, 36 through 39, Jesus said, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And second is like it, you shall love your neighbor as yourself." So there's the commandments that Jesus said he would keep if we love him. In John 14, verse 15, it says, Jesus said, "If you love me, you will keep my commandments." Love your neighbor as yourself. We're not going to let ourselves go hungry. We're not going to let ourselves go without a roof over our head unless it's the last thing that happens to us, right? We're going to work very hard to get to that point, to make sure that we're taken care of, to make sure we're fed, and make sure our family's fed. Our world has gotten to the point where we allow our government to subsidize these things. We allow our government to take care of these things. Didn't start out that way, folks. Church started out taking care of those things. That's where the government got the idea. When the church started, they took care of their own. And then they took care of people outside the church to make sure that they were fed, to make sure that they were clothed. We need to get back in a mindset of loving our neighbor as ourselves. Hey, it's easy to get away from it. I get it. I do the same thing. We get caught up in work. We get caught up in family. We get caught up in life in general. We forget. Hey, where we live, the houses that we live in are on an alley. In fact, I was just telling Casey the other day, it makes a big difference. Because where I grew up, all the garages were on the front of the house. So everybody had to pull in from the front of the house, and you see your neighbors, and you wave, and you get down the street. You kind of get to know people. And where we lived in California was the same way. Here, all the garages are in the back. You going through the alley, through the back door into the house, nothing. I don't even know who my neighbors are half the time because we don't see them because everybody's going in through the back. So we have to make an effort to try to get to know the neighbors. And to be honest, we probably haven't done that as well as we should. But I encourage you strongly, look for those opportunities. Look for the chances to get to know your neighbors. You may never know what's going on in their lives, but if you don't get to know them, you definitely won't know what's going on in their lives. And you won't know how to help them or what we can do for them. So that's something we definitely need to think about. Next, let's look at the L word, love. Love, once again, it's a verb. It's an action word. It's not that mushy feeling you get in junior high or high school when that hot guy or girl walks by you. That's not love. That's something else entirely. Love is an action. This is real grown-up love. This is the kind that you have to work at. It's a choice. For those of you who are married, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And it goes both ways. Believe me, that wasn't a slam on anybody. That goes both ways. We have to work at that because we're humans trying to live in the same house, and that is tough sometimes. And I'm one of the hardest people in the world to probably live with, so I know that. But we have to be willing to put forth that effort. It does cost us something. Phileo is a brotherly love, kind of like Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. That's phileo. That's the love that you have for a close friend. It's someone you want the best for. Agape love is a sacrificial love. It suffers without expecting anything in return. But either way, both kinds take effort. It's not free. The next word to pick out of that section is neighbor. Jesus used the parable of the Good Samaritan to describe who our neighbor was. I'm sure most of you already know that the Jews and the Samaritans were not exactly on friendly terms. If a Jewish person had somewhere to go that was going to take them through Samaria, they would go days out of their way to walk all the way around that city and that area. That's not a good sign. but Jesus called them their neighbor. Jesus is calling us to love everyone the same. So I think when he says everyone, if someone out here is part of everyone, then that's them. All of us. You're probably thinking, how do we love our neighbors? In Mark 10:44 and 45, Jesus said, "Whoever would be first among you must be slave to all. For even the Son of Man came to be served, to serve and not to be served, and to give his life as a ransom for many." If Christ came to serve and we're supposed to be Christ-like, that's our calling. I don't know about y'all, but that's a tough one. That's not what we hear every day on the TV and the radio or anything else for that matter. Internet. You deserve this. You're good. No, not really. It's not what God said. Not on our own. But the world wants us to think that we are good. And they want us to think that we're the best. And what's good for us? Follow your heart. Don't follow your heart. It's wicked and evil. That's another subject. But that's what the world wants us to think. They want us to think that we know what's best for ourselves, and we should do it. And they want us to think that we should put ourselves before everybody else. It's not going to work. And if what we've got in our culture right now doesn't prove that, I don't know what does. We've got a bunch of people that have decided to put themselves before everybody else, and look where we ended up. It's a mess. So, Christ came to serve, and we are supposed to be Christ-like. I think that's where we ought to start. I'm sure you all know the verse, Ephesians 5:25. Husbands, love your wives, as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. Wives, no elbows. Give it a breast. If you want to have that conversation, you can have that conversation after church, okay? But I think that's a really good place to start. If men are supposed to love their wives like Christ loved the church, that means we put their well-being before our own. And if we put other people's well-being before our own, others' needs, I think we're going to have a much better society. Because that's exactly what Christ did. So if we remember, follow Christ's example, put everyone else's stuff in front of ours instead of trying to be selfish and take advantage of what's good for us, which, let's face it, that's the way we're made, that's the way we're wired. But we have to stop and change that attitude and change that mindset to make sure that we're following in Christ's footsteps. And again, following, it's an action word. We're following Christ. If you stop moving, you're no longer following. So we need to keep continuous action, following Christ, following in his footsteps, keeping up with him and not just lagging behind. James isn't talking about that exactly, but the reality of it is, it does tell us that we are supposed to love sacrificially. And it's going to cost us something. It's going to take work and it's going to take effort. And the truth is, it does start at home. And that goes both ways. It goes for the ladies as well. Our actions and attitudes at home, and if that's what we practice, you ever practice what you preach? Well, practice what you're going to do outside. Practice loving your wives. Practice loving your husbands. Practice loving your kids so that when you get out into the real world, that's the way you do it. It's really not that hard to understand. It's just really hard to do. There's a big difference, big gap in those two. Verse 18, but someone will say, you have faith and I have works. Show me your faith apart from your works, and I will show you my faith by my works. For some reason, when I read this, I pictured James having this conversation. Is probably why he wrote it down in black and white. He probably had this conversation with somebody, and he was telling somebody, hey, just because you have faith doesn't mean you're saved. You got to have something to go along with this. But if you just have works, that's not going to save you either, because that's works-based righteousness. That's not salvation, right? Jesus plus anything is religion. Jesus equals salvation. But anytime you try to add something to that, that's going to be a man-made religion. It's going to be man-made effort, and we don't have any way to get to heaven through that door. That's a closed door. But I picture him having this conversation, and this guy says, I have works. I'm going to make it. Right? You see, you've talked to these people. You've heard them. Yeah, but I'm a good person. I help the poor. I feed the homeless. I walk the little old lady across the street. I walk the neighbor's dog. I do good stuff all the time. So I'm going to go to heaven. The problem is, whose standard is that? And at what point does your good stuff outweigh your bad stuff? Who sets that rule? Is it arbitrary? Next time somebody says that, maybe you should ask them where that line is. Did they know? I don't think they can answer that question. But it's certainly something to think about for them. Obviously, the only way that we can get to heaven is through the blood of Christ. We have to have that salvation, but we have to put forth some effort. The reality of it is, if you don't have a relationship with Christ, you're not saved. The biblical way of looking at that, of judging that, is see what kind of fruit do you bear. What's showing outside of your life. In chapter 3, James kind of says sarcastically, I think, can you get fresh and salt water out of the same spring, or figs from a grapevine? When he's talking about that in that chapter, he's actually talking about the tongue, but it kind of applies to the rest of our lives too, doesn't it? If God's working in us and changing our lives, it should be coming out. People should be seeing what's going on inside your life on the outside. In Galatians 5, it tells us how we should act. It gives us the fruits of the Spirit. It says, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such things there is no law. And in 24, it goes on to say, and those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. That means we get rid of the old us. We get rid of our old ways. We get rid of our old ways of doing things. And we start thinking and acting and becoming more like Christ. If we're thinking, acting, and becoming more like Christ, and we're getting rid of all this stuff that we used to do, what are they seeing? They should be seeing more like Christ. They should be seeing love, joy, peace, patience. For some of it takes a little bit longer. I'm kind of on the slow side. So it takes me a little while longer to get some of these things to come out of me. But that's part of the sanctification process. And we're all at different points on that curve, every one of us. But you should be seeing some kind of change. I know we don't always display those traits all the time. And we'll be the first to admit the patience, peace, and the self-control are harder for me than some of the other things in that list. And I'm sure if we took a poll, everybody would have different things that they struggle with. Because we're all human. And we all have different personalities. But we're all sinners. So we all have things we struggle with. We have those sins that we just It's just so hard to let go of. Well, that's part of my personality. That's the way I was born. That's the way God made me. Oh, it's just like my parents. Well, I got news for you. I've had to change a whole lot of those things. That I was just like my parents. Part of my personality. Now, have I conquered them all? Oh, heck no. If you don't believe it, my wife, I'm sure, can tell you stories. But I'm working on it really hard. And God's doing some really cool stuff. But you know what? I'm also 55 years old. It's taken a while. But you got to keep on moving forward. Once again, those behaviors that you're changing and becoming more like Christ are the behaviors that everyone else around you should see and experience. And once again, behavior is an action. It's work. In the second half of verse 18, he says, you can see my faith by my works. I think what he's saying is, hey, watch me. I'll show you what faith looks like through my works. Just follow me around for a few days. Watch me in action. I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. In 1 Corinthians 1:11, Paul writes, be imitators of me as I imitate Christ. Do what I do, because I'm doing what Jesus did while he was here. And he told us how to do that when he left. That one's really difficult. Because that means you are being the example for someone. So when you're discipling someone, which we should all be doing to some degree, that means you are the example. I actually told somebody one time, be careful who you follow and who you think is great, who you look up to, because you want to make sure you got the right information coming. Everyone has someone looking up to them. The problem is we don't even necessarily know who that is. It might be somebody at work. It might be somebody you're not even aware of outside this building that knows you go here, that sees you out and about. Maybe it's just your family, your wife, your kids, brothers and sisters, whatever that is. Whether we like it or not, we are an example. Because we have claimed Christ, we are an example of Christ. Because that's what they see. That's kind of hard-hitting when you think about it. I'll tell you what, it's even harder is when I was younger and I called myself a Christian. I think back to the things that I did and said that other people saw and heard, and I cringe. And I'm grateful for grace and for forgiveness, because I can't even imagine. I literally can't even fathom what some people must have thought. And I, to this day, pray that it did not turn people away from Christ completely. So be warned. You are an example, whether you know it or not. I think one of the things that we forget is we, as followers of Christ, we are imitators. We are imitators. And if you're not imitating, then you're not following. Again, these are action words. These are steps you can take to get somewhere, which is closer to Christ, further down that sanctification process. So I think James is saying in verses 14 through 18, kind of a summarization of that section. If you're following Jesus, and again, let's remember, following is an action. If you're not moving forward, then you're not following. If you're following him, then your faith should be moving you to works and actions for God's glory. The works come out of the overflow of what God has done for us, and that's where they come in, doing what Jesus taught us to do. In Hebrews 6:10 it says, "For God is not unjust that he would overlook your work and the love for what you have shown the saints in his name, as you still do." It's telling us God sees and he knows what we do and why we do them and what our motives are. And I think he smiles when he sees us with the right heart and the right motives doing exactly what he would ask us to do. In verse 19, it says, "You believe that God is one. You do well. Even the demons believe and shudder." I think this verse is really appropriate for our age and time in the world. It's weird. We're still in that Bible Belt, technically, the South. I think we're probably on the tail end of it, but we're still in it. So we meet a lot of people that believe that God exists or Jesus exists. Granted, that number is getting smaller thanks to education systems and internet and everything else that goes along with it. But we still meet a lot of people that say, "Oh, I believe in Jesus." Sure. I think the problem is they do believe that he exists, but they don't believe on him for their salvation. However, what's really sad is there's so little reverence for God. It says the demons believe and they shudder. The demons shudder because they know what he's capable of. They know who God is. They don't even have to think about it. I saw a t-shirt one day that said, "Jesus is my homeboy." I thought, wow. No, he's not. He's not your homeboy. In fact, the fact that you're wearing that shirt tells me you probably don't really know who he is. You're talking about the God that created everything in this world, died on a cross, rose again, and is coming back in strength and power. He's not our homeboy. We need to have a holy reverence and a holy fear of who God really is. The problem is that peace and grace have been preached so many times that that's what people like. The problem is they don't want to hear about the justice and the truth. And I think the reason people don't want to hear about the justice and the truth because then there's consequences to our actions. It's not just, "You're saved, everything's great." Well, first of all, not everything's going to be great. You're going to have trials and tribulations. God said that in the Bible. Second of all, we have a responsibility. Once again, faith in action. Doing stuff. Following Jesus. It's not a one-time deal. It's not one and done. Let's think back to when Pastor Grant taught in Revelation 19. In verses 11 through 13 it says, "Then I saw heaven open, and behold, a white horse. The one sitting on it is called Faithful and True. And in righteousness he judges and makes war. His eyes are like a flame of fire, and on his head are many diadems or crowns. And he has a name written on him that no one knows but himself. He's clothed in a robe dipped with blood, and the name by which he is called is the Word of God." I don't know about y'all, but that kind of gives me a little chill. That's serious. That doesn't sound like grace, love, everything's cool, man. That's serious right there. He's coming back. And when he does, especially the way things are going, he ain't going to be happy. Except with us. How about in Exodus 13:3? "The Lord is a man of war. The Lord is his name." Yes, God is love. There's no doubt about it. He embodies love. You can't separate the two. But he's also just. We need to keep a healthy respect and a fear and a reverence for who he is. And we need to make sure we worship all of him. God is God, and he has different things about him, just like we do. We have to remember, we need to worship all of God, not just the parts that we like. You don't get to pick and choose. In Isaiah 45:22 through 23, God says, "Turn to me and be saved, all the ends of the earth, for I am God and there is no other. By myself I have sworn, from my mouth has gone out in righteousness, a word that shall not return to me. Every knee will bow and every tongue shall swear allegiance." God's saying when he comes back, you can bow or you can bow later. Everyone will know that he is God. Everyone will know that he is the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. He gives us a choice now. Not so much later down the line. So we need to make sure we tell our friends that we know the truth. We need to make sure that we're telling people about Jesus, but about all of Jesus, not just the fun stuff. Verse 20. Do you want to be shown, you foolish person, that faith apart from works is useless? 21. Was not Abraham our father justified by works when he offered up his son Isaac on the altar? You see, that faith was active along with his works. And faith was completed by his works. And the scripture was fulfilled that says, Abraham believed God, and it was counted to him as righteousness. And he was called a friend of God. James is kind of like, all right, you still having trouble with this concept? Let's try another example. I'm going to go Old Testament on you. For us. Back then, it would just been the Bible. But anyway, what about Abraham? He had so much faith that he was willing to take and sacrifice his only son on an altar. And when I say sacrifice, I mean Isaac was tied up with rope. He was laying on top of the altar, bound. He wasn't going anywhere. Abraham's got the knife in his hand. Now, I don't know what was going through his mind, and I can't even begin to fathom it. But whatever his thought process was, and the only thing I can think of as a parent is, all right, Lord, you made me a promise. You promised me that when this kid was born, he was going to have a bloodline and you were going to make a nation out of it. If I kill him, that's not possible. However, you're God. You promised you'd do this, so I don't know if you're going to bring him back to life or what your plan is, but you said you were going to do it. I trust you. That's some faith, folks. I can't even fathom what that moment was like as a parent. I mean, it's unbelievable to me. But anyway, to start with a faith and a belief on God. That's what he did. He said, Lord, you told me to do it, I'll do it. Not but, not maybe, not if. I'll do it. But Abraham didn't come to this faith overnight. He laughed when God said he was going to have a kid. He's I'm way too old for that. That ain't going to happen. There ain't no way that's going to work. And then when it didn't happen when Abraham thought it should happen, he had another baby. He had a baby with his maid. So his faith was pretty weak at that point, wasn't it? Compared to actually binding and putting his son on an altar. So I think what we have to remember is that it's not overnight that we get that kind of faith. It's over time. Through that sanctification process, as we grow, God teaches us things. We learn things, we experience things, and our faith grows. And we get to experience different things as we go. God shows us more. He shows us more. As we're ready, we learn more. We do more. He tests that faith a little bit more and a little bit more. A little bit more on the edge sometimes. Sometimes a lot more than we want to be. But that's how we grow. I think the best thing about that is we get to, at some point in your life, you can stand at a point and you get to look back at your past. You can look forward at your future. You get to see what God has done in your life from the time that you started, the steps that you've made, the things that you've learned, and you see where He got you at this time. And hopefully you can look at that and go, wow, that's awesome. I had no idea I'd be doing this right now. No, really, I had no idea I'd be doing this right now. I just tell you that right now. But the point is, I can look back and I can see all those things that God put into place and all those lessons that I learned. Some really hard and some not so hard. But all that stuff that led up to being involved with this church. And then the little things that have happened since then. And the things that God has allowed me to do. And then I start looking to the future and I'm like, uh-oh, what's next? I don't know, but like, God, let's do it. Kind of makes me excited because I don't know what He's got next. I had no idea we'd be here today, but it's been awesome. I think one of the things we need to do is constantly work out our salvation through that sanctification process, working out day by day, every day, working that out, reading, praying, the relationship between us and God and Jesus. It's very important. In Philippians 2, 12 and 13, Paul wrote, "Therefore, my beloved, as you have always obeyed, now, not only as in my presence, but so much more in my absence, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling." There's that reverence that we talked about. Paul talked about it here too. "For it is God who works in you, both to will and to work for His good pleasure." I think we just have to remember Abraham believed God completely. He believed that God made him a promise. He trusted that God would keep that promise. In 17:19, that promise was, Sarah shall bear a son, and you shall call his name Isaac, and I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, with his descendants after him. Abraham believed that so deeply that he was willing to sacrifice his son because he believed, he pisteuoed, he believed on God. He put his whole life in God's hands and his son's life. And he was willing to take that step knowing that God had it under control. Even if he didn't understand how God was going to take care of that situation, he had no doubt that He would. His faith in action was counted to him as righteousness, and he was called a friend of God, which I think is such a cool phrase, friend of God. And one of the commentaries I read about that is, a true friend of God is someone who seeks God's good through a heartfelt commitment to forward God's plans and purposes in the world. I'm going to read that again. A true friend of God is someone who seeks God's good through a heartfelt commitment to forward God's plans and purposes in the world. Do we have a heartfelt commitment to forward God's kingdom? Now, when I say commitment, I don't mean we just say, yep, we want to see that happen. No, I mean, what are we doing to help forward God's kingdom? Are we doing anything? Now, as a church, I can tell you that corporately we are doing some things. And just having church is part of it, right? And then we've got some other ministries that reach out to other people and we try to help people, and there's some different things that we can do. But what are we doing individually? What are we doing at home? What are we doing at work? What are we doing with our friends? What are we doing with our family? Remember, people are watching. Are we being imitators? Are we showing them Christ? And if we are showing them Christ, are we doing anything with that? Or are we just saying, are we some of those people that were like, well, I just, I don't actually witness to people. My walk is my witness. That's great. That's part of it. But we can't do that with everything. We have got to take steps to tell people the truth. They need to hear the gospel. We have to tell them, show them, and then tell them the gospel. It reminds me of John 15, 14 and 15, where Jesus said, "You are my friends if you do what I command you. I no longer call you servants, for the servant does not know what his master is doing. But I have called you friends, for that all that I have heard from my Father I have made known to you." So what's a friend? A friend is someone who always has your back. They'll protect you. You know each other. You know each other's likes and dislikes. You have shared interests. You have a genuine love and concern for each other's well-being. You want what's best for them. And usually to get to that point of friendship, you've had to spend a lot of time together. Jesus kind of checks all the boxes on that, doesn't he? Except for maybe the spending time together. That's on us. We got to spend our time with Jesus. In prayer, in reading. That personal time is super important. It's great to spend time with everybody else, but we need to spend that one-on-one time with the Lord. We've got to have that time in. Since we're talking about grace and works, I'm taking a detour. In Ephesians 2, 8 and 10, it says, "For by grace you have been saved through faith. And this is not your own doing, it is the gift of God. It's not a result of works, so that no one may boast, but for we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand, that we should walk in them." Now, I know we read 8 and 9 earlier, but as I was studying, I read through 10. I'm going to read verse 10 again. "We are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, for which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them." Saved by grace through faith, for good works prepared in advance for us. Don't miss that, y'all. We were created for good works. But not only that, God prepared them in advance. We're not falling into these things. God prepared these for us. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, right? Before time and space, God knew you. Think about this. God knew you. Long before we were ever born. Long before we were ever actually finished being created. He knew each one of us, and he loved us. And he knew us so much, and he thought about us so much, that he actually sat down and prepared things for us to do. Now that's pretty cool. But you know what's even cooler? If he prepared things for us to do, what do you think that it was for? It's for his kingdom. It's for his glory. Not for us, but for him. So he prepared things for us to do so that we could bring glory to him. And in order to do that, we have to be a part of his work. He doesn't need us. He can do whatever he wants without our help. But he loves us so much that he wants us to be involved. He not only allows us to be involved, he wants us to be involved. And we know that because he prepared things for us to do in advance. So if anybody ever tells you that you're not worthy, say, that ain't true. I've been washed by the blood, and because I've been washed by the blood, I'm seen perfectly through Jesus, by God. And he has things for me to do because he prepared them for me long before we ever knew who we were. Folks, I don't know about y'all, but that to me, when I started reading that and praying about that, I thought that is the most unbelievable thing, that we don't even think about those kind of things from day to day. But yet, God has prepared things for us to do. So, that being said, keep that in the back of your mind. And when you're praying and having your quiet time, ask God what they are. Ask what he's got for you. You know he's got something because he already said. He said in his word he's prepared them for us. So it's not like you're asking him if, you're asking him what. So when you've got God's ear and you're saying, Lord, what do you want from me today? What good works do you want me to do? He's got a list. You'll be able to figure it out. But you got to be aware of it and you got to be looking for it. You can't just fall into stuff. We have to be cognizant of what we're doing. We have to pay attention. Anyway, I guess the reality of that is, for me, that's super exciting. For me, it just makes me want to know what those things are and makes me want to, okay, God, what's next? What do you got next? What do you want me to do? How can I get from point A to point B? What do I need to do on my end? What do I need to learn to get to that next phase? For me, it's exciting. I hope it's exciting for anyone who's a believer because you can look at that and go, yep, I got things to do. I got a mission. Quoted 1970s comic strip, I'm on a mission from God. And that's for real. We really are. He has given us a mission. Don't forget it. It's very important. All right, detour over. We'll get back to James. James 24, or 2:24. You see that a person is justified by works and not by faith alone. And in some way, was not also Rahab the prostitute justified by works when she received the messengers and sent them out another way? Again, James is just repeating the same thing over and over and over again, beating it into our heads, hoping that we don't misunderstand, using different ways to tell us so that hopefully everybody gets the way they need to learn. That's really all this comes down to. He's saying again, if your faith doesn't make the change, make you want to change and push you to grow your relationship with Jesus, and because of that relationship, make you want to help others and tell more people about Jesus, then maybe you really don't have a real faith. Maybe that faith isn't genuine. That faith on Christ, you've put your entire life in his hands and given him the ability to run your life. I mean, let's face it, he made us. He's got to know better than we do, right? What's it going to hurt? I mean, I don't know about y'all, but before I let him do it, I made a mess of stuff. So if we give him everything, now granted, there's stuff that, you keep tugging on trying to get back, but those are those things that you'll learn over time. But give him all of it, and he's got it all. We're all in, right? Just like we talked about a few weeks ago. We're all in. If we can be all in, and he's running the show, and then we have the relationship, and that relationship will then turn into us changing, and as we change, we want to help others, and as we help others, we want to tell them about Jesus, right? So it's just something that happens. It's a growth pattern. It's just steps that we have to take. Charles Spurgeon once wrote that the grace that does not change my life will not save my soul. We're not going to go into it today completely, but real quick, in Joshua 2, it tells us about Rahab the prostitute and that she hid and saved the Israelite spies, and that whole story's there. I suggest you read it. If you haven't, it's a good one. Rahab had faith. What's really interesting to me is she didn't know much. She knew the stories that she'd heard about what God had done as the Israelites came out of Egypt and as they went through the desert and how they got to where they were and everything that transpired through the years. She just heard the stories. But the reality is she looked at that and went, from the time they left there to now, whoever this God is, he hasn't changed. I don't know who he is, but I believe in him because I can see a pattern of what he's done through their lives, and I want that. So when those spies showed up, she said, hey, I believe what you got, and I'm on your team. I'm going to help out. And because she had that faith, she was willing to risk her life to hide them and then get them out the back door, basically. That's a pretty powerful faith for someone who really didn't have much exposure to it. Nowadays, we've got a personal relationship with Christ. We've got an entire Bible full of his word. We should have some really good relationships, I think. But once again, it's really easy to get sidetracked. It's just something to think about. In verse 26, for as the body apart from the spirit is dead, so also faith apart from works is dead. Okay, look. If you're making a sandwich, I know my friend Jeff loves ham and cheese sandwiches, so we're going to go with that one. If you take the bread out of the sandwich, you no longer have a sandwich. I think you got an hors d'oeuvre or a rolled up piece of ham and cheese, I don't know. But you no longer have a sandwich until you put the bread back on it. I know it's a really silly illustration, but I think it gets the point across that you can't separate those things and still have that same relationship. You've got faith and works. If you don't put them together, you don't have that relationship with Christ. Ham and cheese and bread. Sandwich. Right? Faith, works, relationship. Yeah, you'll be remembering that next time you go to make a sandwich too. Our faith has to be a true saving faith. We have a relationship with Jesus. If we have a relationship with Jesus, we are friends of God. If we have that relationship, we will be driven to serve him, to do his will, and follow his commandments, especially the two greatest ones. We read Matthew's version earlier. Here's Mark's. Mark 12, 29 through 31. Jesus answered, the most important is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. He's saying there's one God. And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and with all your strength. The second is this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these. Loving your neighbor can and should look like what James says back in the first chapter. In 127, he writes, religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this, to visit orphans and widows in their affliction, and to keep oneself unstained from the world. Obviously, that's not everything, but that's a good place to start. Orphans and widows are kind of some of the most needy people that we have. So if you're going to start somewhere, probably not a bad place to be. Before we wrap this up, I've got a couple of things I think we can remember. Number one, faith is a verb. It's an action word. It requires effort. It's not something that we say, I believe in or have faith in. Put feet to your faith. Do something. Number 2, God prepared us for good works in advance. Good works don't save us, but they do give us the opportunity to participate in growing the kingdom of God. So if we are doing those good works, we have the opportunity and the ability to participate in growing God's kingdom. There's not much more important. There's nothing more important than that. There's no more important work than being a part of that. Number 3, our good works are just our salvation in action. They are the overflow of the goodness of God spilling out of us and onto the people around us. We're not doing it for show. We should be doing it because we can't help but do it. Because of the relationship we have with Jesus. That as He changes us, that relationship pushes us to change. As we are changed, we are pushed because it overflows out of us and onto those around us. That's what a true relationship would be like. John 13:35, Jesus said, "By this all people will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another." Love is a choice and an action. It's works, and it takes work. You know what's funny? Salvation is a free gift, but being a Christian takes an awful lot of work. If you're not working, you're not doing it right. Just keep that in mind this week. Would you stand with me? We're going to pray and ask God to be with us this week. And Casey and the worship band will come up and they'll do our last song. And I'm probably going to get yelled at when we get done because I think I'm a little long and my daughter will be upset with me. Come on up. Lord Jesus, we thank you for today. Lord, once again, we are so grateful and thankful that you love us and you call us friend. Lord, that you saved us, that we are able to be not only your friends, but your family. And Lord, that you allow us to be part of your kingdom, but not only that, you saved us to do specific things so that we can work in your kingdom and grow your kingdom. Lord, we thank you that you love us so much, that you are willing to lay down your life for us. Lord, that you rose again from the dead after 3 days so that you could sit at the right hand of the Father, so that you could pray for us day and night. Lord, we are so thankful for who you are and for what you've done. Lord, we thank you for this morning, and I thank you for everybody that showed up this morning. Lord, I pray that you would be with them this week, that you would give them wisdom, that you would give them guidance. Lord, that your Holy Spirit would fall on them. Lord, that they would lean into you, Jesus, that their relationship with you would grow. Lord, that we would never be afraid to step out in faith and do the works that you have called us to do. We love you, and we thank you for this time. We ask these things in your precious holy name. Amen.
From creation to the cross, there from the cross into eternity, your grace finds me. Yes, your grace finds me.